Welcome back to the Brandon K Show. I am your host, as always, Brandon K, and this is a real show. Yeah. Today we're going to talk about conscious reprogramming. Conscious reprogramming is the way that we think and the way that we might change the way we think over time. I'll talk about it more as the episode goes on, but I'm here with my co-host, Mr. Nick V.
Hello, everybody.
Woo! Nick V.
Great to be here.
Nick V was here for the Belief Cycle episode. And
Great time.
so you guys might remember the bear cycle, where it all starts with belief. It goes to energy, emotion, and thoughts, into action, into results, and back to belief. Go back and watch that episode right now to hear what we're talking about. But it's very much in life about what we believe and how we think. We're going to talk more about how we think today. We're also here with a good friend of mine, one of the most conscious people I know, Mr. Frank Aviza.
Hey, Brandon.
Welcome, my friend. Frank has also been a guest on
Great
the
to be here.
show.
Thank you.
He came on my Instagram show to talk about mindfulness. We had a great day in the park just talking about mindfulness and picking his brain on consciousness and portals and everything else. And I got to show Nick some of those videos. He really liked those videos.
Loved them. I'm excited to pick your brain, Frank. It's going to be awesome. Smart man with some great insight to living.
So
Thank you, Nick.
we're going to talk about conscious reprogramming. Conscious reprogramming.
I was like, oh.
Conscious
funny.
reprogramming. Very exciting. And I'll give you the teaser from my idol and hero, Mr. Yoda. Yoda said, "You must unlearn. You must unlearn what you have learned." Yes.
That's extremely wise.
I can see this is going to be a fun show.
meaning, we're all taught things at the beginning where some of it can be toxic messages about fear, about sex, drugs, and rock and roll. It can be so many negative ways to be taught. And if it worked, everybody would just stay programmed in that way. But I find that the way that, I've had to look to Frank for counsel, as a mentor. I've had to, even look to Nick as a mentor and others is to reprogram how I'm thinking about things, unlearn what I have learned, even those little thoughts that are like someone's looking at me the wrong way or someone's judging me or I'm judging them. All this stuff has to be reprogrammed. And that's why I'm happy to talk about it today. Even we're going to dive into it. I want to talk first about our sponsor because Brandon K Show is sponsored by Gift Apply. Gift Apply, we've had them on the show on the Gift Apply charity chat episode. Go check that one out. Gift Apply is charity wrapping paper. So 33% of the sales go to charity. So I like to share their message. They're nonprofit. They are a flat pack for convenience, eco-friendly, and made in America. Each purchase includes a 33% donation to one of these 8 incredible charities: Alex's Lemonade Stand for Children's Cancer, It Gets Better Project, Best Friends Animal Society, Give Kids the World. Elevate your gift giving throughout the year with Gift Apply charity wrapping paper, which every wrap is a gift to charity, and utilize the coupon code there on the bottom of the screen, BK Show, at checkout to save 25% off your entire order. Thank you again, sponsor Patrick and Patrick Gift Apply. We will be repping Gift Apply every day on the Brandon K Show until we're all millionaires. Okay, or that's not the point, because Frank and I have been talking this week about how being a millionaire isn't even the goal. Happiness and contentment are the real goal, and the belief cycle can go totally towards having better energy and thoughts and actions towards living more consciously, just spiritually, or towards kindness and love and just happiness that has nothing to do with materialism. So I don't On the Brandon K Show, we're not here just to talk about materialistic things. We're here to talk about deep spiritual growth. Frank, would you like to chime in on this?
I don't think I could say it very much better. Let's say I agree with you, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to hear from you, Frank, first, just about your journey with going from negative programming to where you're at now. Would you want to tell us about it?
Sure. I would say that I have a lot of negative programming in my like preconditioned mind that comes from, mostly my childhood and so forth. And then in a lot of areas, it was causing like a lot of problems in my life. But, worse to be sure were depression and anxiety, which I have had, really bad, cases of since at least in like second grade and really throughout my whole life. So I have since found that there's like parts of it which are like pretty well controllable. I have found through like mindfulness. And then I have found that for me so far, there's parts of the preconditioned mind that I just can't get to by way of mindfulness. And I feel like in those areas, I haven't had as much reprogramming done.
It's so interesting, and the same is true in my story when it comes to um I got sober 7 years ago. I started to think consciously about negative thinking in the last 3 or 4 years, and just, you know, being more mindful of that a thought is just a thought and I'm an observer. But even so, we're going to have challenges. We're going to have all those thoughts, those resentments can pop up, or vices. I still, I went from one vice to the next vice to the next vice. Um, so when we talk about conscious reprogramming, like, no one is perfect on the planet. So we can only ever be our best self for the day. Well, I'll turn it over to Nick and hear what you want to say about this.
Absolutely. I mean, everything is a perspective. It's somebody's perspective that may be truthful to them. It may not be truthful to others. There's very few things that are true to this earth that are natural, that haven't been created by a concept or a thought that was man-made. So we don't have to get, super deep into all of that yet. But with conscious reprogramming, I'm very excited for this topic to dive in deeper. I think we're conditioned to abide by society's views, to be competitive, to make money, outwork our partner. Maybe that's America's kind of social views. But when you can really find your own purpose in your own calling in what brings you joy and happiness, and it's not always material. I think that's the meaning of life. Absolutely.
My journey with this negative programming, I'll start from the beginning, is just having this major depression in my teenage years, always feeling different than everybody else, even, turning to drugs and alcohol, but even having moments in my late teens and early 20s where it's like, lights out, I'm not going to go anywhere, I'm not going to leave the house, depression. And just because the thoughts were so strong, and and the anxiety was so great, and just there was no overcoming it at times. But I found my way to therapy, and I started to hear about this concept from oh, I forgot to bring it, the Dr. Amen book, Change Your Body, Change Your Brain, Change Your Brain, Change Your Body. And he talks about brain plasticity. He talks about the ability to change our brains at any time in our lives. And he talks about automatic negative thoughts, this idea that without even thinking about it, humans are kind of programmed to just have automatic negative thoughts all the time. And he calls them ants, ANT, automatic negative thoughts. And he says too many ants are going to ruin any picnic. And that stuck with me since 2008, 2010, which was like, these are my thoughts, but why they're not me. At a certain point, and we can talk to Frank about this, is like, our negative thoughts aren't us. So that's how nowadays I can reprogram them. I even started to give the voices in my head a name. I say this is a separate entity than me. Nick read that book Untethered Soul,
Yeah.
which is also about the bad roommate.
Mm.
And it's just about staying conscious of the idea that these negative thoughts aren't even us. And I'll turn it over to Frank to tell us more about that.
Well, you did it again because you really did say a terrific thing about what I think about it, what we have shared in speaking about it. I would say though that I try to think about it as the preconditioned mind, the ego, the memories, all that stuff are like living in my body, and then the permanent essence doesn't. And that what I try to do is focus my attention on the permanent essence. And I can recognize it by things like the permanent essence isn't worried. The permanent essence isn't in a hurry. The permanent essence isn't resentful. The permanent essence is all these things. And I can, as a sort of, sort the thoughts out and then sort, through things through that filter. And then I focus my attention on the permanent essence. And that seems to be this sort of just sort of this one practice for that just like is a catch-all for me for all of the negative thoughts, the self-defeating thoughts, the worry, the the anxieties of 100 different kinds. It's just to try to focus on the permanent essence, which I can recognize, through this filtering. So it's not like a different kind of solution tailored to each kind of like negative thing that comes up in my mind.
And I would say other words for the permanent essence could be the authentic self. That's kind of how I did it. Was I thought about the authentic self versus the negative voices in my head. You could also call it your highest self. You could call it your spirit. You could call it a lot of things. Do you have any other names for it, Nick?
Eckhart Tolle calls it consciousness, spirit, love.
I was gonna say the observer.
The observer.
Yeah, the observing mind.
The observing mind. And if we can, the thing is we get so caught up in those emotions. When you're in the emotions, you may realize you're still the observer, but you're also feeling the emotions while you're observing. So we have to learn to observe the emotions and the thoughts, because the emotions are what we feel in our body, energy and motion. I read that in a book. It literally, emotions may just be essentially energy flowing through us. And if we could observe that emotion as well as the thoughts, regardless of what they are, and not get lost in them, then it's huge, because it's we know that we're trying to get tricked constantly. Our fears are tricking us. They're pulling us in this way, that way. And it seems so real in that moment. And the emotions are so real in that moment. But if we're able to observe pure love, that is how we're supposed to be programmed. And man and society and conditions take people the other way.
Yeah, and when we were starting to come up with other names for conscious reprogramming, like dialectical behavioral therapy, CBT, DBT, like these are all just ways that somebody has to consciously think, this is my emotion, this is my thought, and there's a difference between the two. And I think we came up with some other. Do you remember what else we were calling them?
There was like, clearing your boo, mindfulness, shadow work, diving into the subconscious and pulling those things out. Huge.
Yeah, and even 12-step programs. You're going through
Let's
a
pause
list.
really quick.
Yeah.
So after this goes by, just go back to and even 12-step programs.
Oh, okay. Yeah, thanks for that. I appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem.
Because I don't even know if we hear it on the podcast, but it does distract us for sure.
Yeah.
Sorry, there's a car going by.
Give it a couple more seconds. Where are we at? 15. Okay, go.
And even 12-step programs, because it's like, this is a list of things, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and we're gonna go through it. We're gonna reprogram the old programming. And sometimes when you go to when you get afraid of like a 12-step program or like a therapy, it's like, oh, I'm going to be reprogrammed to a robot or something. My point with that from the beginning is that we're programmed from birth, and we're negatively programmed from birth. And it's like we want to have conscious reprogramming. We want to have a better reprogramming, something that we find in life that is superior to what we were taught, uh, just taught and told, and didn't think about in any way, and didn't analyze. And I wanted to say also about we're at a place in life and in history where technology is higher than it's ever been. Um, our access to each other is higher than it's ever been. Psychology is at an all-time high. More studies have been done than ever before. So being following what our grandparents did and our great grandparents did, and trying to just follow the traditions of the past, that's not necessarily going to be the best way. That's just how I see it.
Absolutely. And it comes down to decades and societies and generations, and those change. It's supposed to change, right? If everything was stagnant and the same, there's no room for creativity, different perspectives on things, and growth. So we always want to listen to our old elders and our parents and grandparents, and there's great wisdom and advice that comes from them, but their framework may not necessarily work for our framework, or it probably will not work.
And I also say that there is so much principle and truth within religion, within the teachings of our parents. Everybody's trying their best, trying to figure it out to the best of their ability. And most religions are based on love, and most philosophies are based on love and trying to do the right thing and trying to stay safe. We're all trying to get to the same place. We're all doing our best, and that's how I've learned forgiveness towards everybody to the best of my ability. But yes, it's like these things should be analyzed at least. That's what the reprogramming is about to me.
Well, I don't, I had to look up conscious reprogramming. I wanted to make sure it was what I thought it was. So my depth of experience here is not that much. But is there any particular thing about it?
Oh, so conscious reprogramming, I think I made that up. But the idea is that you're the reprogramming of the mind. Like what was Frank calling it this whole time? He was calling it the pre-programmed mind, or
Preconditioned
the
mind.
preconditioned mind, going from preconditioned mind to mindfulness. That's
or basically creating your own reality. How can we create our own reality and have our own views and thoughts, and something that's wider and open-ended rather than, confined and kind of how maybe we were raised.
I think we've always had it. I think that I know it by its feel, so I can filter thoughts out, and so a whole bunch of thoughts that are all past one kind of filter and come out. It feels calm. It feels unthreatened. It feels unhurried. It feels warm. It feels funny. It feels sweet. Feels tender. It could be any of those kind of things, and everything can filter, and then we can find that there's a consciousness there that this is its stock and trade, and then there's sort of this mind which is constantly generating these things that are oh so familiar, oh so very familiar, that come from the past, and they always keep falling through the same filter also. So it has a feeling tone of worry. It has a feeling tone of oh, what happens if this? If it has a feeling tone of hopelessness, and it has a feeling tone of despair, and has a feeling tone of everything is a waste, and all this kind of stuff. And so it's a separating of the two, and feeling like the two, as Brandon mentioned earlier, right? That you have a name. Hey, you never gave us the name for the other one, for your best self.
Yeah. Best self, highest self, authentic self, permanent essence.
Oh, that
soul,
was the name.
Soul, spirit. Yeah, no, that was all the same thing. Like a lot of these terms just overlap and are the same. And I just, yeah. So
I thought maybe yours was like Freddie or something.
Oh, the friend that he was naming it, maybe, and the voice.
Oh, the voice in my head. The voice in my head.
Well, I thought maybe his name was Freddie or something. I didn't know it was that.
It's funny. There was a quote that said, 90% of our decisions that we make are governed by our subconscious. And people would go, how does that make sense? Like, there's no way. Like,
Yeah.
I choose what I'm going to do, and these are the actions that I take, and this and that. And I think where people fail to realize is
Yeah,
everyone has an inner voice, and everybody plays ping pong with their inner voice. If they're aware of it or not, if you're conscious of it or not, we are battling with ourselves over fears. And these don't appear to be huge fears. This could be like, do I hop in the shower now? Do I walk my dog now? Do I respond to this phone call now? These are all very quick things that are firing off in our brain that are actually governing a huge portion of what we do throughout the day, rather than people saying like, hey, go to the, it's not people telling us what to do. And then we're contemplating that. This is all very quick, very subtle decisions that fire off in our brain without us even realizing. And if we can get a hold, and if you're conscious of these little things that depict what we do, because it could be like, oh, I'm going to go to the gym. And then all of a sudden, oh, well, last week.
What if so-and-so is there?
Yeah. Or like I said hi to that girl and I didn't get the reaction that I wanted. Or, I went and shook this guy's hand and wanted to build a relationship and he didn't want to lift the weights with me. Or
what if it's closed, or it was closed last Sunday at 6 a.m. and what if it's closed again? Like, just,
and then you may not go to the gym ever again. And that just governed your life. That just governed your life. And now you may not go for a year. You may not go for 2 years. And that's actually a pretty big, you could have gone this route and now you're going this route because of a simple fear like that. So it actually, if you really break it down and think about it, they can govern like your whole life.
So in studying this, I have heard that some people don't have a voice in their head. I haven't met them yet. I do want to ask Solomon, do you have a voice?
It's just
Solomon?
yourself talking, dear. It's when you ask yourself questions. That's it.
Well, I can say, I talk to myself a lot, and I've read that geniuses talk to themselves a lot because it just helps me organize. It's like taking things in your head and just putting out in front of you and letting you sort of see it objectively and then make decisions on it that way. But I don't know that I'd call it another person.
Sure.
Or think of it as another,
Yeah, no, I'm saying it's just a voice. It's not another person. It's that people can also get that and like, oh yeah, I hear voices or like, but that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying it's yourself telling you things. It's thoughts. It could be 1,000 different thoughts, but it could be all you.
Yeah.
But some people don't even have that. Is what I'm saying.
Gotcha. Okay.
Decisions that you make with yourself that you don't verbally maybe say out loud, but you're thinking about it.
Those people are NPCs, by the way.
Non-player characters. Hilarious. So Nick, I want to go down the list of like some of these ways to reprogram. Limiting beliefs. What do you do about limiting beliefs?
Well, limiting beliefs, all they're going to do is keep you confined, keep you stagnant, keep you in fear, and keep you from growing. And I think a lot of our beliefs come initially from other people, from other people's fears, maybe from our parents' fears. No, you're not going to be able to be a professional, blah, blah, blah. You're going to waste too much time. Or, oh, no, you can't, get into that school because it's going to be, too expensive. And these are fears that are coming from other people's fears and then are being programmed onto us. Like Frank was saying, a lot of the time in childhood. And I think a lot of that brain formation happens in childhood. And all of a sudden that forms into adulthood. And we have these same exact fears. And people think that, oh, I'm just this way, or I have ADHD or ADD or, bipolar, and that's how I'm going to be for the rest of my life. And that defines who I am. And I'm putting myself in this box. But in reality, and 2024 shows this through meditation, mindfulness, spirituality, and quieting the brain, your brain is neuroplastic. So if your brain is neuroplastic and all these things like schizophrenia and ADHD and ADD and depression and anxiety are occurring in the brain, but if it's neuroplastic, that means it can change. It's elastic, or neuroelasticity, sorry. That means it's changeable. So then if all these things function from the brain, ADHD, schizophrenia, but it's claims to be we can change it, then can't you through hard work, and I'm not saying this is you wish it and all of a sudden it happens. That's not how any of this works. But through research and training your brain and finding ways, you can change your perspective on anything in life. You are not confined to your image unless you believe it yourself.
What does that say?
Read it out loud.
Someone read
If
it.
you don't like how things are, change it. You're not a tree.
Jim Rohn, he's a motivational speaker. But I want to say about we're getting into tricky
Good one.
territory here about there's some like about depression, anxiety, ADHD. Like people are medicated for these things, and that can be a tool that helps them overcome it in that day or over time, where they maybe in the future don't need it. But the idea is that there are true disorders out there that
Yeah.
are result of trauma usually or also physiological. So these
Mhm.
are real things, but and I don't even say like, oh, I'm going to be cured of this if I have depression. I don't think I'm going to be cured of this all the way someday, but I'm always working towards being cured and doing my best to always make progress. And that limiting belief is saying this is depression and it's a 10 and it's always going to be a 10. It's like maybe it's going to be a 9. Maybe after a year it's going to go to an 8 and then down to a 7 and then to a 6. And then at a certain place in time, I'm going to find peace with myself. Frank here is an example. I hit him up, ask him how he's doing, and what do you always say, Frank?
I'm doing okay.
Mm-hmm. Can you tell us about it a little bit about how you managed to keep?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, so I try to not use the ants, the ANT, the automatic negative thoughts, to really pollute my space. So if I can stay away from the ants and not pollute my space, then I can feel happy. And it seems to be the happiness is a natural condition underneath it.
Mm.
If I just don't have the negative thoughts on top of it, if I just don't have anything like that, the natural state seems to be feeling pretty happy.
Mm-hmm.
So like you're able to reprogram it when you're having a bad day, when you're feeling depressed. No, yeah, no, I get inspiration every time I talk to Frank because he says like he just says my priority is to having a good day today, Like he's always
Fire.
Oh,
Fire.
yeah. I
Yeah.
can say that.
And it's like just consciously thinking I'm going to have a good day. Like maybe I was challenged, maybe I was bummed out for a moment, but I didn't let that moment dictate my whole day. Nick, can you tell us about how you deal with it?
Yeah, I mean, and absolutely, each day is a new day. And the reason why I'm passionate about this, and I'm not trying to say I'm not going against doctors, and I'm not saying my advice is better than this. I'm just saying I was very depressed for multiple years, and it was very difficult for me to accomplish walking my dog or responding to a phone call that someone left a voicemail. And I felt so depressed, and I tried so many ways to get out of it, and I figured out something that works for me. So that's all I'm saying, and I'm not going against anyone's advice or anything in the medical field. But I'm just saying, if you limit yourself to the belief like I'm ADHD or I'm useless or I'm never gonna be a success or I can't play sports or I'm not like, for instance, I viewed myself as never being a reader until I was like 28 years of age. So I never liked to read books. I was a movie guy. I played video games, and I created an image and I confined myself in a box that I'm not a reader. And I started discovering books about a year and a half ago. And it's like, what the hell? I was missing a plot. This is a part of actually who I am. Like I found some truth because I love this that I've been missing out on my entire life from self-confining. So imagine how many other things are like that no one will ever realize because they're self-confined. So if you believe it, that you're not, if you don't think you can do it, then you can't. You're confined. You won't.
So yeah, just as an example of these can be small things, they can be big things. A limiting belief: I'm not a reader. Imagine how many people out there watching this or out there, kids out there, are like, I'm not a reader. I don't like to read.
Yeah.
Reading is hard.
Yeah.
Or like, I don't get anything out of reading. It's like, try some more books.
Yeah.
Try books that you like. Try books
Right.
that that entertain you. Like for me, I didn't think I was a reader, and then I found Harry Potter.
And I think it's like,
And then I'll say one more.
Right.
yeah, sorry.
And then Harry Potter obviously was enjoyable. I got through that whole series. But then when I was in my 20s, it's like I like to read self-help books. I don't like to read fiction. I don't like to read I like Harry Potter, but I don't like other fantasy books, and I don't like textbooks. I like to read self-help because it applies directly to me. So I mean, that would be the advice for me.
And I think it ties down too into like, just how can we train ourselves to be open-minded in any and all situations, and not just open-minded once, but how can I have lasting open-mindedness? Because if you're open-minded and choose to take what you'd like and leave what you'd like, that's everything. But if you're closed-minded, you can't take or leave. You're just leaving everything.
And
So
and willingness.
And I think the ego is people that are smart or maybe got good grades their whole life or this or that programs into their ego to where they can't hear as much anymore because they've been successful with their life. And that goes to show. But if you can train yourself, I don't know, and I don't know, and I don't know, and just kind of adopt that attitude, the information is going to come in.
Yeah, I heard someone saying it about Joe Rogan, another podcaster, where he is not an intellectual. He is just a searcher. So he goes and he just asks questions. He's just always going. And then he said, like, oh, he's had like 2,600 shows now, and he's always just asking questions. And it's like a 2,600 master classes. So now he can become more intellectual. But
Yeah.
to start, when we're kids and when we're in our 20s and everything, we just have to go out there and seek knowledge and see what works for us. And that's part of the reprogramming too, which is I need to be open to what I find. And that's what I'm always doing is I'm looking for a solution. I have major issues.
I have something on that.
Yeah. What's that?
Yeah, I wanted to say something about that, which was to say that one of the reasons that I try to stay in a good mood is because I try to set up for the kind of day that I'm actually going to have. So let's say the kind of day I'm going to have is one where I have a lot of free time, I have a lot of peace, I have a lot of quiet, I have access to the internet, stuff like that. So I can say, today is going to be a great day because I'm rich in peace. I'm like a billionaire when it comes to peace. And today I'm going to luxuriate in a great amount of peace. Now, if I woke up this morning and said, I got to have sex with Christy Turlington, or this is going to be a terrible fuck of a day, and I'm going to make it miserable for everybody in the universe around me,
Sure.
Then the odds of having a good day would be a lot less.
Any outside external goal that you're not able to achieve in your own mind is like, oh, I'm not going to have a good day unless this happens, unless it's sunny and my car works and I have a good job
Right.
with a bunch of money coming in. I can't be happy unless I do these things. I mean, obviously, we have to find. Frank here is an example of you make you start with a state of happiness, and then you anything good that happens after that is just topping on the cake.
I love it, and it's minimal expectations and finding. I never knew what this meant until I started this journey into spirituality. Peace comes from within, right? And it's like, what does that mean? Like, how does it come from within? And we're programmed that material items and events or the gal or the alcohol or the drug or whatever it may be is what makes us happy. But if you can get to the realization where actually you can sum up everything you'd like from within, and if you can figure that out and have that realization that it all is within you, it's huge. It is huge. And that's why like monks and these ancient, or not ancient, but different religions across the world and geographies, these people are at peace doing minimal things. And you may look in, an outsider may look in from the perspective and go, what the hell are they doing? Like, how could you just sit there all day without any material item or TV or doing anything and live life? But for them, they're looking at you going, how are you out spending all this money, consuming, stressing over if I can make it to my appointment on time, and then I got to go respond, So we look at each other like we're crazy is really what it is.
Yeah, and Nick's a great example of I met this guy a year and a half ago, and he was much more in his head, I'm sure, at that time. And then he took on the practice of meditation daily, and even
changed my entire life,
teaching me how to be more mindful. And tell us about that.
I've meditated, I think, every day now for maybe 16 months, and I have about 8,000 minutes of meditation time under my belt, and I can't miss a day now. And it's changed my entire perspective on life. And you may wonder, what does meditation do? It allows you to see the truth It allows you to slow your thoughts down heavily, so your delusions are gone, your skepticism's gone, your fears are, there's no such thing as getting rid of fears. Are they dumbed down heavily? Absolutely. And this is all from literally, so think of your brain as an engine that's spinning, 1,000 revolutions a minute when you're thinking really, really heavily. And when it's working really, really hard, the word hackneyed. Have you ever heard of hackneyed? It means worn down from overuse. And once you do that for years and months or whatever it may be, the quality that you're producing isn't as good anymore. It's becoming worn down. You need a new brain, essentially. Meditation's going to slow those revolutions down tremendously to preserve your brain. It's not going to break down. It's going to run smoother. It's going to run cleaner. And with that, your entire life changes. So meditation, you may go, well, what is sitting there just quieting my mind? Do it for a year straight. Meditate daily for 3 weeks to start. Daily. It's got to be daily, because meditating once and then again in a week and then again in a week and saying it doesn't work. That's why it didn't work. But if you do it daily for a couple weeks and then do it daily for a couple months and then do it daily for over a year and don't have any results, I will literally give you, I'd pay you $5,000, as much money as you want. It truly works. It really does.
You got to prove it with videos.
I need more content.
They have videos where they're meditating every day and they send you 1,000 of them or 300 of them. 365 videos of them just meditating. That's the proof. An hour each. So that's a lot of, okay. Okay. But I was going to say, so we talked about negative thinking. We talked about limiting beliefs. And then another big one for all of us is fears. And how do you overcome fears, Nick?
Fears? Sometimes I can't, because I'm not aware that I'm in them sometimes, and then they're depicting my reality. But if I am aware that I'm in them, which that's huge, it's false evidence appearing real is what I've heard. It's in the future. It's survival instincts flagging things that don't need to be flagged in modern society. But it comes down to the observer again, training yourself to be the observer, not just thinking about it. But if you can train yourself long term to be the observer, then those fears are you can see them more clearly.
And I wanted to say about the last one, that the mindfulness, and to me, I've had the ability to do this for some years, and I enjoy the mindfulness and meditation as well. But it's to be able to get an outside perspective of yourself in the situation. That's like the superpower, is to go out on a meta level and look at you from the outside and say, what is this person? How can I help this person? What are they doing wrong? What are they doing right? When we're just trapped in our brain and we're not able to even see what we're doing, what we're afraid of, what defects we have, that's where, they say that, the way to open your mind is the most closed-minded thing you can do is just have one kind of view on the world. But try to grow it to two views. Try to see it from another person's perspective, at least, one issue, say like, oh, it could be this way or it could be that way. Then you have two different perspectives. Now you're open-minded that your perspective might not be correct, but really there's even more than two perspectives on things. So when you get really open-minded, now you're seeing 3 perspectives, 4 perspectives, 5 perspectives, 10 perspectives. And that's a tool that I use in my life, because my brain's going to tell me something bad's going to happen, or somebody's thinking this specific thing about me. And I learned this from Tony Robbins. What else can this mean? Literally reprogramming my mind every day, saying, what else can this mean? Is like, I can come up with 10 different things that it means. Maybe this person's having a bad day. Maybe they didn't really look. Maybe they didn't really give me a bad look. Maybe they were looking at the guy behind me. Maybe that bad look is, they just have a resting bitch face, So there's all these things. Stephen Covey calls them paradigm shifts, but it's like there's different ways to see the world. And yes, Frank, chime in.
Well, I was just going to say that, but when you talk about another point of view, my thought on it is there's already another point of view. There's our permanent essence, you know what I mean? Mm. And so its point of view is a very good one already. I don't need a second or a third one. And if somebody looks at me funny, again, I don't need to come up with reasons for them looking at it funny. I can realize that it's only my ego that is concerned about it. And as for the rest of me, I assume everything is fine. And I assume that the poor gentleman who looked at me funny for a second is going to be okay. And, everything about it is fine. And so I think it's a lot less work than needing to come up with reasons why we may have misinterpreted what the guy looked like when he looked at us. Suppose it just means like my ego is concerned about that and I'm not.
I agree 100%. This is more like a technique because once you get to the higher plane where you're looking at it from the outside, then you don't even have to ask. You're just like, it doesn't matter whether he looked at me or not, and you're like, it's loving. Everything is love, anyways. But like, just to break out of the first consciousness, which is like only seeing the world one way, then the way that I got to where I am now is I had to ask, what else can this mean? And then that's how I opened my mind up into now being able to see it from another higher perspective.
I mean, what else can
interesting.
Go ahead, Frank. I didn't mean to cut you off. You were starting.
No, I say interesting. I hadn't thought of the connection there before.
I liked the idea that if you were to just put everything through a positive filter or a loving spiritual filter and say everything is for good no matter what it is, and you're just looking around at the world from that perspective, from a God consciousness to begin with, then you wouldn't even have to like question yourself at all.
Absolutely.
That's what Frank's saying.
It's perspective, glass half full, glass half empty. If you look at things through love, you may see someone who's doing something that's extremely chaotic or detrimental, breaking the law. But if you can see it like, well, that person, it's not their fault. It's probably how they were taught, or maybe they were lacking this or that. There's always an origin. Like, I recommend to try to teach people to go back to the origins of anything that they're studying, because that's the roots. That's where the answers are. And everything that expands further and further from the origin, it's not necessarily always the truth, or it stinks because people are dealt certain things. But I like to go back to the origin. What caused everything, and with that, sometimes it's easier to love. It's easier to love. And I just know, like, it's weird when I'm doing well in life and like if I'm being productive, it's almost my thoughts are just like, I haven't used drugs or alcohol in over a year. And it doesn't have anything to do with the drugs. It's basically when my thoughts are good, if I'm working on my spiritual self, then it's like all the emotions that I have, I can't even think about really being as negative, even though I know I was negative a year ago and I know how to act negative and it was in me. But when I'm doing well, it's almost like that part to pull information from it's not there. It's just like gone,
Yeah, Nick just made a TikTok about, he was coming up with a realization about realizations. And he was saying that to have a realization is really just seeing the truth, seeing something that's already
real
inside you, seeing something that's already real and true inside you. And that's all. That's like basically, and Frank can talk about this too, which is just like the self and the ego are just lies. Would you agree with that, Frank?
Largely,
Yeah.
I would say it's worried because the ego knows it's going to die and it's worried about death. But the permanent essence knows it's not going to die, and the permanent essence doesn't fear death. So they come at it from very different points of view, these 2 points of view.
And if you're, having these realizations that are taking you to higher and higher levels of happiness and contentment and serenity, it can be this ability to realize that the self and the fear is the lie, and the sanity is just that everything's going to be all right and be good.
It's like what Taylor Swift
no matter what happens.
It's me, it's I'm the problem, it's me, everybody at tea time or whatever in her song.
Mm-hmm.
I just think about her saying that, and I think people probably have realizations way after the fact that maybe something crumbled, like maybe it was me doing that, and a lot of the time it comes way later on, or it takes us a bit. But once you become conscious to that type of thinking, and it's like what you said, Brandon, it's hard to go back once you've gotten those types of thinking ingrained in you. So it's almost like, can you ascend to what's already out there waiting for you? But you have to figure out how to get
So you can see how all this conscious reprogramming goes into deep philosophical and spiritual areas. And, it can just spiral and go up and up and up. Did you want, I don't even know how much time we have left, but
Oh, we're at about 13 minutes.
13 minutes left?
Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. Um, so did you want to tell us something about the Untethered Soul book and what you learned from that book?
It's a really good book, and it's the observer. So it's learning to observe our thoughts, and emotions are so big. Thoughts is observe, but observe the emotions too, and try to let those pass as well. But essentially, that's what they're teaching us: is that when we feel if we feel sad or angry or hurt, but we're aware that we're feeling those things, and then the next day we may be aware that that emotion changed, and then the next day we may be aware that that emotion changed. If we're aware that these are all changing, then we can't be those emotions, right? Because we are aware of those things. We're basically we're the mothership to hold those things, but we're a separate entity from it. And if you can realize that those are just passing through me and I'm observing these things passing through me because they pass. So if they were a part of you, they wouldn't pass. That would just be who you are day by day, minute by minute, second by second, but they change. If you pay enough attention to your moods and your outlook, they always change. Oh, nice. There it is right there. And if you can realize that today I'm observing my anger. Today I'm observing I'm very happy. Or today I'm observing that I'm sad. But if you just can train yourself that you're observing all of those things, but you're not angry, that's just how I am today, or this and that, the realizations can come. And it's just easier to go about life because you're not getting submerged. I'm an angry person, or I'm a depressed person, or that's who I am. And that's my story and my identity. And I'm going to always be this way. But if you can observe those passing, it's huge.
Yeah, the advice I got along these same lines when I called the voice in my head. I gave him a name, and the advice was whenever I'm having a bunch of negative thoughts, write them all down on paper, and it's like a purge. We call it a purge. I write it all out. Oh, this person thinks this person thinks that, and nothing's good is ever going to happen to me. My thought can come up with negative thoughts all day long, every day. I could do it right now. I could come up with a whole 5 pages of all the negative things my mind is telling me. But basically, just write it all down, cross it out, write lies at the top, and just say, that's not me, that's not true. And then write a gratitude list after that and say, what am I grateful for? And all of a sudden, I've gone from negative thinking to positive thinking and realized that all these thoughts on my head are complete lies. And, they're the ego, they are fears. They're fears, like Frank said, they're fears of the ego losing itself, losing its control. They're fears of me not having control over situations. But there's so much just about like trying to control everything is why I could be negative, is like I'm trying to control things. But if you're just letting things happen, um, you're in much better shape. So
What do you think about that, Frank?
Acceptance, I always, in 12-step groups, we would do serenity prayer and we would say, we would accept the things we cannot change. And I would think about it very sincerely, when I was saying it. And then I realized once upon a time that was really my most reliable portal, into my permanent essence, was acceptance. That if I just very sincerely just take a moment out to accept and even radically accept, I like to radically accept everything. I find that then I really am already lined up on my permanent essence. That's where it puts me.
Frank, when you say portals, I've gotten into portals as well a little bit. What would your definition of like a portal be in that? When you accept something and then influx of emotions go through, you feel the acceptance taking place. Maybe your problem has diminished a bit. What portal are you going through?
Mhm. So I'm going to my permanent essence, which isn't worried. And so by accepting radically, it seems it puts me completely focused on my permanent essence. It's almost like I'm not doing it. It's like that's where the rabbit hole leads to, right? If you go in the rabbit hole here, it leads to this other place down there. And then I discovered a second one I shared with Brandon the other night, that I noticed that if I ask myself the question, like, well, if I put a picture of the Buddha's grin in my, I'm not Buddhist or anything, but if I put a picture of the Buddha's grin in my face, and I say, why is the Buddha laughing? Why is the Buddha smiling? Why is the Buddha content? I find that that's a very reliable portal. Also, I find that, like, I go into that very sincerely, just openly, and then the next thing you know, I'm on the permanent essence.
I was gonna try to draw a picture of Buddha grinning, so we could all just focus on Buddha's grin and have a portal into our permanent essence.
We should start doing that. And totally, it's almost like different dimensions right here on this planet. There's a bunch of different dimensions.
Use Yoda.
Take you places.
But I think so. This was a concept from Eckhart Tolle about these portals and finding different portals. But I don't know if he meant to different places. But Frank is saying they all lead to his permanent essence, and his permanent essence must be very, it doesn't need to be any higher than the permanent essence. But is that what you're saying? Are there portals that lead different places, or they all lead the same place?
I'll let Frank go.
No, not to my knowledge. I think they all lead the same place. Yeah.
What do you think, Nick?
I mean, I just think it's
another one that Eckhart uses is stillness.
He opens his portal from stillness. Yes, absolutely. I think almost a portal is like, it may be happening in this dimension in reality, and we're not, physically moving up to space, but there's something that happens inside us when we accept something that releases emotions or takes away emotions, that all of a sudden we have clarity that makes more sense. And it's almost like we're living in a different dimension. You hear people talk about different dimensions here on Earth. So I think the portals, it's my reality. Maybe we both see trees, we both see the sky, but based on your emotions that you're feeling inside versus my emotions that I'm feeling inside, and then our outlooks are going to change based on that. It's almost different realities entirely.
Yeah. I mean, we all see it differently. It's interesting. Like, yeah, just like the permanent essence is like the truth. So it's like the ability to see the truth, the ability to live in the truth. The truth is the higher power, the higher spirit. It's like so many different ways you could see it. I don't claim to have the answers. I like to look at it from different perspectives, but I mean, I could imagine if you go to the highest God consciousness and see everything from that perspective, you're going to have a better life. But as long as you don't add the ego into it and say, "Oh, I'm higher than anybody else," you have to also remain humble.
Yeah, Seneca. I don't know what I don't know, and I think of smart people. I think a really deadly combination is someone who's extremely smart and well written and well versed, but also maintains the attitude of I don't know, because they're just going to collect way more information that way.
Mm-hmm. And remain humble and so that they can listen to more people.
Yeah.
And they can not piss people off, not scare people away by acting like they know everything and trying to control everything. You're gonna have a very powerful person. I mean, who might not even want power because they're more evolved.
And what's the definition of power too?
Yeah.
Some people say money, others say happiness. There's a big difference of definitions there. I like happiness and contentness and being content.
Hey,
and I think if you
I had one more thing where I go to feel terrific.
Go ahead.
What was he saying?
Oh, one other thing that makes me feel terrific is watching the show. Is watching the show Kung Fu, the original show with David Carradine.
Wow,
he's a very, very, very sincere mystic and ascetic, and they always set him up for these, dramatic circumstances for him to get involved in. And he's always courageous, and he's always pure, and he's always true, and he always seeks peace, and he always seeks fairness, and he always seeks, and all these kind of things and everything. But it's like a masterpiece, this series. It only ran for 3 seasons. And I'll be damned if any sound-minded person could watch that show and not feel like moved in the right place a little bit by watching that show.
I heard some podcast or somebody talking about this where they were saying, yeah, like every episode kind of ends with a lesson, like a life lesson. Is that the idea?
Well, yeah, it's a Shaolin master going through the Old West. Think about it that way. So he's always getting into stuff, and and he tries to find the peaceful way out of things, but doesn't always work.
Do they spell out the lesson at the end, or do you kind of have to find it yourself?
Yeah, because it does flashbacks back into his life. And so then he'll remember lessons he learned growing up at the temple, and then and he impresses upon others too as he goes.
So you're a fan of this show too, Solomon?
Oh, I watched it growing up.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's slow. It's a little bit of a slow type show, but then once the action starts, it starts.
What year was that?
70s, I think.
You guys looking forward to the Kung Fu reboot?
Yeah.
They've already tried it once.
Did they? When was the
No, because
yeah.
The last reboot was where the son goes around with an automatic machine gun, blasting everybody through 100 rounds of ammunition every episode.
Yeah, not the same.
Bro, it was terrible.
Whoa, that's such a drastic difference.
It's funny.
Yeah, they tried to.
It's so drastic. It's so drastic.
That's irony. Just the irony of the world.
I practice martial arts too, and there's some type of there's a trend I notice with like old school martial arts practitioners and teachers and mindfulness and how they relate to one another. So it's pretty cool to see the trend with that. Like, makes me want to study more, watch more of these movies, and see what some of the masters' wisdom is.
Yeah. Well, there you go. Sorry. So that we got a recommendation to go watch Kung Fu. So we're all gonna go home and watch Kung Fu tonight. And read Untethered Soul.
Ooh.
Think about your thoughts, unconscious thought, subconscious thought. You got, just being mindful, trying to distance ourselves from, the thoughts that come in and observe them from an outside perspective. That's what conscious programming is all about. So happy to have you guys here. I feel like we covered a lot of ground. Really, it all comes down to this guy, Mr. Yoda. Yoda says it all in Empire Strikes Back and and Return of the Jedi, but yeah. So I'm gonna keep. We're gonna have. I'm trying to remember what next week episode is, but we are sponsored by Gift Apply. We want to thank Gift Apply. I want to thank Nick and thank you, Nick. Can I get some applause on that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's your applause.
We also want to thank Mr. Frank for beaming in.
Frank.
Yeah.
So we had a lot of fun here today. I hope somebody
thank Brandon as well for putting this thing together and making it all happen.
Doing something.
Yeah.
No, I should have hit the. No, this is fun.
Dramatic chipmunk.
We want to thank Brandon. No, and then we also want to thank Mr. Solomon. He's the one who really got this place all going.
Appreciate it.
Going back to the origin.
Yep. And yeah, we'll see you tomorrow. Thank you.